Jeff Adams. I'm working at a company called Prospel. We run a bunch of jobs boards, including Grad Australia, but we're the organizer of today's event. And so thanks so much for joining us. In the spirit of kicking off as well, I'd just like to kick off with an acknowledgement of country. And so I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. And I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present, as well as emerging. To kick off, I've got a range of people here. We've got a range of graduates that are working on the job at employers in the sector of R&D and manufacturing. And we've also got a graduate recruiter among us as well. So I think we're well geared to be able to contribute with as much good content as we can to answer as many great questions from you as well. I'd also like to just do a special thank you to, before introducing the panel, I'd like to just do a big thank you to Engineers Australia, who've made this event possible today. The kind folks at Engineers Australia, they're committed to helping advance the engineering profession and make sure that today's engineering students, like you guys all on the call, go on to begin careers with impact in the future. And you could just heads up, you can also become an Engineers Australia member for free as a student by simply heading over to yea.engineersaustralia.org.au. Now, to kick off, I'd like to just quickly introduce the panel. We've got James Gore, who's a digital solutions architect and engineer at Schneider Electric. We've also got Bridget Pink, who's a national account manager at Honeywell. We have Stuart Hinchliffe, who is at Cochlear, and he is a past Cochlear summer student and Cochlear graduate engineer. And then we also have Isabel Wilkinson, who's the manager in marketing for outreach at the Department of Defence, based in Canberra. So let's kick off, guys. It'd be just great to a quick introduction, if you'd like to just introduce yourself and describe what your organisation does. Who'd like to kick off?
I can kick
off. Go
off.
for it, Stuart. Good man.
Yeah, sure. So hey everyone there. It's kind of weird. This is the first time I've done one of these virtually, so we'll see how we go. I'm Stuart, and I came from far north Queensland and a faraway land, and I've now landed in Sydney to work full time as a senior software engineer at Cochlear. I was in your position only a few years ago. I went through the summer student process at Cochlear, got offered a grad position, got to do lots of cool rotations there and lots of interesting projects, and then spent some time as a firmware engineer before switching to kind of develop iOS and Android apps with Cochlear now. So what does Cochlear do, and why am I developing software? Well, we develop a range of products. The ones that we're most well known for are cochlear implants and bone conduction implants, and they're really to address a hearing loss in people. So we've been doing this for 40 years, and we're a global leader in implantable hearing, and we've helped hundreds of thousands of people through their journey from profound hearing loss to being able to hear, and the amount of emotions that brings. So yeah, really excited to be here today and hopefully share some experiences. I'll pass off to James. He looks eager.
I am. Thank you, Stuart. Hi, everybody. I'm James, and as Jeff said, I am a digital solutions architect for Schneider. And yes, I will explain what that actually is. But I was a mechatronics engineer, well, now a graduate from UNSW. So I too did my industrial training internship at Schneider in their summer program. And now I've just finished the graduate program a couple of months ago now. So in a permanent position, doing solutions architecture. And so that's designing smart sensor solutions and analytics for mostly electrical distribution. So what Schneider does, I could probably rattle on for half an hour about all the stuff, but I'd summarize it as energy management and automation. So we help customers monitor, control, and pretty much be smart about their energy use. And we do that by monitoring devices, collecting data, and putting AI analytics on it. The other half, design industrial automation systems. And that's for all sorts of industries: water and waste, renewable energy, vanilla bean micro farming is one of the most recent ones. So yeah, all sorts of stuff. I will throw it to you, Bridget.
Hello, thank you. My name is Bridget and I have been at Honeywell for 5 years now. I joined their grad program as a sales engineer, which was a really exciting role for me, working in the kind of hybrid space between the sales team and the management teams and the engineering teams as well, and kind of bridging those gaps within there. So Honeywell globally is, probably like James was saying with Schneider, you could go on for half an hour. They do so much. There's the aerospace division, buildings division, cities, industrial, manufacturing, safety products. But I'm working in the Honeywell building solution environment where we're looking at safety, productivity, and environmental efficiency for large buildings around Australia, New Zealand, and globally. And I guess in the context of what Honeywell's looking at hiring for at the moment, there's the kind of Honeywell building solutions component, safety and productivity, and also Honeywell process in the industrial side. So that's where that sits. And yeah, I'll probably park it at that for now and hand over to Isabel.
Hi guys, so I'm your token arts student for the day. Forgive me, I don't know how to speak about any of the cool things defense does on the R&D and engineering side of stuff, but we do have a particular pathway this year called Research and Innovation, where any kind of STEM background, which includes things like psychology, essentially can go into our Defense Science and Technology group, rotate through the grad program, and the team in the area focuses on 1 year, 5 year, and 15-year horizons. So all of their work is forward facing, and it's across things that you haven't even considered we need in 15 years time yet, but that's their entire job. And then also things that are near immediate R&D. So all of our defense big toys that no one else can play with either. So yeah, that's defense from an R&D kind of front.
Awesome.
I have a marketing recruitment background, so all the kind of nitty gritty process stuff is my wheelhouse.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, guys, and great to have you all here. Isabel, might keep with you for the moment in terms of what would a student be, or what would you as an employer be looking for in an application for students wanting to apply?
So it sounds cheesy, but the biggest thing you can do to make yourself stand out among everyone else is to clearly and articulately demonstrate why you want to work where you're applying. So with defense, it's being able to actually talk with passion and knowledge about what areas and parts of defense that you're really interested in. So there's a team in defense that does everything. There's a team in our research and innovation lab that's redesigning how armor is built and manufactured depending on the statistical analysis of where organs are in the body and how important they are. So there's everything from that little thing to literally redesigning how submarines go through water to minimize their backlog at the end of stuff. So if you can find something that really speaks to you within wherever you're applying and then demonstrate that throughout the entire process, you really stand out about the people who maybe put in the wrong department or the wrong company in their cover letter.
Yep, and great to hear that from a graduate recruiter who's had good time knowing what employers are looking for as well. In particular, defence, the Department of Defence, but I think it's probably fairly consistent across the board for all employers. I can see a few nods there from the grads. I'd love to just ask one of the grads, perhaps Stuart, if you could elaborate on some important advice or a piece of advice that you'd give for a student aspiring to work for an organisation with this, within your sector. I mean, you're in R&D and manufacturing. You're building products for a retail audience typically, but anything, some aspirational ideas as to what a student should be, considering when they're looking at applying with someone like Cochlear.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from my personal experience, I think that there's so many opportunities if you're passionate and willing to give things a go. So my kind of advice would be to don't be afraid to try and apply for something new. I started as a electrical engineer, went through firmware and then ended up in software. So you can, if you kind of put up your hand for opportunities, then you never know where you're going to end up. So in terms of our industry, if you're a mechanical engineer, don't be afraid to say no to opportunities as sales engineers, or going through different rotations, trying manufacturing, trying electrical engineering, because that's really where you grow with some of those opportunities. And there's a lot of companies that do a lot of really cool stuff. So put your hand up, give it a go.
Awesome, mate. Thanks very much. I was wanting to hear some sort of further advice on what I've got a question here for students who land a job with you. What advice would you give them to help them survive and thrive in their first year? And I think the interesting one is, what shouldn't one do in their first year as a grad on the job? What shouldn't one do? Maybe James or Bridget, if you'd like to take that one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Sorry to butt in front of you, Bridget. Yeah, look, I'll start answering that one with what not to do. And I think Stuart hit the nail on the head there. 100% agree. Don't stress. Yes, the career sphere is a big new stage and it's got a big learning curve behind it. And I'm sure that's what all of you guys out there are sort of wondering about, how intense that is. But everyone understands that. Like, your organization will understand that, and they will be supporting you through your growth. So will your fellow grads at the start of your career. So what not to do, yeah, stress out about doing all the right things, this and this and this. That will totally come over time. So that's my advice on the survival piece. You've done the degree, you've done the interviews, the AC, all that tough stuff, so you will survive. Now, to thrive, that is a bigger sort of discussion. It's important to note that thriving in uni will not necessarily be, all right, you're going to thrive straight away in the workplace. There's going to be some different skills, especially communication-based skills, that you pick up and will need to pick up as you go through. But in short, I'll echo Stuart again. I think it's perfect to say, be courageous is where you will be able to take and make like opportunities for yourself. I think initiative and autonomy are skills that are really coveted more in the workplace than in uni, from my experience at least. So yeah, all in all, don't stress too much. And if you find yourself stressing too much, something that I've always done and have found to be really helpful is have an open feedback channel between yourself and your manager, and then checking in once in a while. What's going well? What needs improvement? Means that you're answering that question for yourself. What not to do and what to do.
Yeah, well put. And I think it's really important that if you're if that line of communication perhaps isn't open with your manager, there's nothing wrong with you starting that line of communication. Sometimes that needs to happen where the team member needs to say, "Hey, my manager, can I, open this up?" You don't necessarily have to wait for your manager, I think, to begin communicating on that level. No, thanks very much, James. Bridget, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that be courageous piece is a really excellent place to start. And when I was thinking about this as well, one piece of advice that I got really early in my graduate career from someone was to kind of to essentially walk into it and to be a sponge, to go into the experience. You do have that freedom in the early stages of your career and in the graduate program to just ask all the questions and do all the learnings. And so there's that kind of be a sponge component, but to actually reach out and pick up the phone. And a big part of it, I think, in some of these, large organizations like we're looking at within this panel here, a huge part of it is about your ability to network, to pick up the phone and call someone senior and start asking some questions, to be able to ask questions. I know in these global organizations, there's a lot of communication you're doing with teams all around the world, and you'll be looking across cultures and time zones, and how can you make sure you keep that communication up and learn from as many people as you possibly can. I think that would be one of the biggest things you can do early in your career to both in benefit to the business, but really in benefit to yourself as well, in terms of understanding what it is that makes you tick, what it is that you're really interested in, and then pursuing and managing your career path to fit that, because I think you'll be most successful when you're doing the things that you really enjoy. So I think that would be one key piece to look at early in the career to thrive.
I might also quickly jump in, Jeff, and say that I think especially in the last year that we've had and the upcoming years with uncertainty, it's also extremely important to take care of yourself as a person. So please take sick leave if you have it, which you do legally. Take your annual leave, take any mental health days that you need as you're entering the workforce. All employees should be aware at the moment that we're currently going through unprecedented, as much as that's a buzzword, to know tomorrow, conditions at the moment, and we do need that extra kind of R&R and mental health breaks. So please take that, because if you burn out in your first year, it doesn't really bode well for how the rest of your career is going to go with your own self, because you're who you have to spend time with.
Well put, spot on. Thanks for sharing, Isabel. It's a very, very good point to raise. It's also easy to be working particularly hard when a lot of us are working from home still. Some are in the office now, and there's that sort of break in the day, but it is easy to be gravitating towards the desk somewhat more frequently. Which I think we're all guilty of, but you can get a lot more done, but you can also, it's just good to be wary and mindful of that as well. Bridget, you mentioned before at the start of the call that you've been in your role for 5 years. You've done a number of different things within Honeywell. I just wanted to ask you about the advice for students aspiring to work in an organisation like yours in this sector, given that you've probably had a bit of a different range of experiences. And if that's something that, is it a 5-year window of time that students should be aspiring for, or, what sort of framework have you taken that approach?
I think someone said it to me recently that the thing with being in a big organization like Honeywell is you actually can have multiple careers within one company. And that's really exciting because, I think there is a tendency for people to grow and develop and change, and interests will shift and learnings will change. So for me, I started as a sales engineer, and that was a fantastic role in the sense that I got exposure to so many parts of the business. There was the legal side, the engineering side, project management, sales, finance, like right across the board. And then from there, have been really well supported within the business to say, hey, look, the energy efficiency component is really exciting me at the moment. I'd love to get more involved in that. And then to say, hey, look, the software piece and the innovation that's coming out from there is really exciting. So I've had that ability to jump between a number of different roles and been really well supported by the business to do that as well. And the other one is a lot of people I'm working with who have been supported within Honeywell to move, regionally and internationally around the country as well, in terms of something's come up with the family and it's been time to move there, and having been supported in that space as well. And it goes back to what everyone in the panel has been saying already. Keep those communication components open with your manager, and I think you'd be quite surprised at how supportive the teams will be to allow you to focus on those components that make you tick and are going to give you that good balance.
Oh, thanks for sharing. It's spot on. I've actually seen a question coming through. I'd like to throw it to Stuart, if that's right, mate. There's a question here of what makes working in R&D so exciting or satisfying for you? And do you see your work coming to fruition or service? I know Cochlear for a fact is very strong here in sort of tangible outputs for people. You mentioned it before. Thought I'd throw that question to you, mate.
Jeff, I was literally just typing the answer to that one. So I have half one drafted already. For me personally, working in R&D just means to work on amazing technology, and to actually see, you know, something that no one's ever done before, built, designed, developed, and then in the hands of our recipients. You know, so one example of that is I got to work in my grad year, in my first year out, I got to work on the Apple Watch app. So I developed, you know, a way for our recipients to be able to change their sound processor settings, so their cochlear implant volume and whatnot, straight from their wrist. And I actually got to talk to recipients, and they were saying, hey, this has changed my life. Like, I can go into a cinema and just quickly tap it without disturbing everyone with my phone or anything like that. So, you know, a lot of the projects which the grads have worked on in the first few years have actually been deployed, and you know, you can get real good feedback from people whose lives you've changed. So, for me, it's huge.
There's, I think James and Bridget's work wasn't, just correct me if I'm wrong, but it was more sort of commercially focused. It wasn't so much retail focused. Is that right, in terms of the work that you're doing? Anything to add on that, James, in terms of sort of meaningful work that you're doing at Schneider and your day-to-day?
Yeah, I think it's a good question in general, because when you begin working for an organization, especially a large one, sometimes you can be affronted by, oh, am I just a small part of this, and how am I impacting? How can I feel and see that? Where some occupations more vocational, it's very easy to see the impact, and sometimes it's not. But I think I've heard a few very good examples when I was a graduate, my first rotation, of working in the automated buildings industry for that rotation. And the example was an operating theater. Yes, there is a surgeon there performing the actual operation on somebody that's heart needs to be transplanted, for example. But when the power goes out, it kicks back in 1 second. Why? Because we're doing what we're doing. And there's a lot of pieces of that puzzle that need to come together for that to work. And so I felt that to be a legitimate and sort of inspiring thing. Next time I was doing work for, forget at the time, Liverpool Hospital, maybe, thinking, okay, this is going to go somewhere. So, you know, find that part of the piece that makes you inspired, and yeah, everyone's work is going towards something. So
cool. Isabel, fire away.
So one of the things in defence that unifies most of our grads is a call to service. We found that most of our grads, especially in the public service and with defence, are driven to better the Australian public in some way, shape or form. And there's kind of a direct impact for that by working in defence for a lot of our grads. So we've got grads who've worked on sending the first satellite up to first Australian sovereign satellite up to space. We've got grads who literally help enhance the, I'm going to say sneakiness, but they would kill me if I said this, the sneakiness of our submarines and all that kind of stuff. And we, people in defence have done incredible things in the R&D side of things. There was a woman whose entire PhD was focused on redeveloping AI so that when passing through airport security, she could predict what missing children and trafficked children would look like in 5 years' time, and re-identify them to then bring them back into where they were taken from, essentially. And we've helped rebuild masks that then got sent out to manufacturers during COVID-19. Defence is so crazy broad that whatever skills you've got, there's something that you can do that will have direct measurable impact on Australian society.
Love to hear that from Honeywell as well, Bridget. I remember looking after Honeywell as a graduate employer on their recruitment needs years ago. And I remember hearing some of the stuff you guys do. I think when I was working on that, it was like looking after the security for Sydney Opera House. You know, tell us about some of the meaningful stuff that you guys work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think touching on some of those ones that have already been said, I mean, I'm currently the account manager across the healthcare portfolio, and, you know, so reiterating a lot of that. And again, same in a lot of that mask piece component and distribution during COVID. I think some of the other really exciting bits, one that really gets me ticking, kind of again to what James was saying about find what makes you tick, is in my early career with Honeywell, I was looking after the Auckland War Memorial Museum, and I've also spent a fair bit of time with Honeywell and at the Sydney Opera House as well. And that art space, you know, does bring so much to so many people. And there were moments where, you know, I'm looking at some of the beautiful treasures and kind of historic components within the museum. And these really need to be maintained at, you know, the right humidity and the right temperature, because you're looking at artifacts from thousands of years ago or taonga that you need to keep really well protected. And there's little moments where I've been in the museum and we've pulled open a piece of art and pulled that behind, and I've climbed in to look at the mechanical plant that's existing behind there. And then as I walk out, and I kind of come climbing out of this piece of art in the museum, and people are staring at me, and you just feel really cool. You go, yeah, man, this is a beautiful building that we're in, and an incredible space, and I get to be involved in it and right there with it. It's fun. It's really rewarding.
Yeah, no doubt. No, thanks so much for sharing. It's great to hear just a little snippet from all the employers on the call as to sort of the meaningful stuff as to what you get to do day to day and some of the things that students can aspire to. I just have another question here. I'll throw it to Isabella if that's okay. Before we start doing a quick wrap up, I do want to touch on closing dates for applications and so forth, just to make sure students know when to apply and so forth. But Isabella, there's a question here in terms of wondering about generic responses when students are applying. You may have seen that in the chat room there, but in terms of any application advice for students, we did touch on it before. Sorry to reiterate it, but I know students do care a lot about it in terms of being able to apply with confidence and doing their research and all that sort of stuff. But could you elaborate on that for us, please?
Yeah, totally. So I think what you're asking about is like the amount of stock standard examples and criteria responses that we see. Of course, especially in the Australian public service, it's always going to be merit-based. So whatever your best example is, use it. But if your best example is on par or might not be group work, because we've all done university group work, we've all been the person that had to pick up all the slack when everyone decided to go on a 6-month vacation, didn't tell anyone in your group. So if you can write about something other than group work, if it's your best example, use it. But if you've got your part-time job, your casual job, babysitting, volunteering, whatever it is that can be used instead of that, I would recommend it, just because you won't look like one of many. You'll kind of stand out for the people that are reading it. And then the other thing is I've seen a fair few questions about GPAs and all that kind of fun stuff in applications in the chat. I just wanted to quickly mention that for us, it's only an eligibility requirement. So some of our pathways will require a credit average to be eligible, but beyond that, it's not really a factor in terms of your application. Beyond that point, you're not going to get a multiplier from having the world's highest distinction or anything like that. So some of our pathways, especially the technical one, don't require a credit average at all. They just need a pass. So you're never ruled out because you haven't had a professional internship and you don't have the highest distinction anyone's ever seen.
Awesome. And just quickly, when can students apply and when do the applications close, please?
Applications are currently open for the Defence Grad Program and they'll close on the 7th of April, and you can preference 2 pathways. You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Bridget, just throwing over to you to wrap up as to application dates, if you've got them for us for Honeywell, and also in one sentence, why students should apply with your organisation, please.
Yeah, so in terms of application dates, best place to check out is earlycareers@honeywell.com.au. That will have all of the details there. So head there. I saw a question in the chat earlier, which I've answered. Your degree looks great. Check out that Early Careers website. In terms of why students should apply with Honeywell, I think that multiple careers within one company piece is really exciting. You get to continue your passion throughout your career.
Awesome. James, how about you, mate?
Yes, we've got internship program, which is recruitment will begin mid-year, and that starts in January next year. The grad program, same thing, recruitment will be around the same time and that's starting February 2022 as well. So keep an eye, se.com careers page is where you'll find out about that, but Schneider LinkedIn, you'll see that there too. Why to do it? Look, I think the grad program is really good. If you're unsure about where between the highly technical to kind of technical to non-technical place you want to be, are sort of able to navigate through that, similarly to how Bridget said. And so if you want to reroute your career direction at will, then yeah, that's all.
Awesome. Thank you very much, James. And Stuart.
Yeah, so from for us, I'll try to keep it short. Why would you want to work for us? Well, do you want to work with amazing people? Do you want to be valued as a engineer in your first year? And do you want to work on like high-tech devices and change thousands of people's lives, you know, as an engineer? So if yes, it could be a good fit, and our applications are open and will close on 30th of April.
Awesome, mate. And that's the summer internship program, is that correct?
Yes, that's a summer internship program,
right.
which is necessary if you want to come into the grad program.
So that's right. So you begin with Cochlear as an intern, apply by April 30, and successful in that internship, you then can get the opportunity to become a graduate at Cochlear, which Stuart's an example of that. I think
Perfect.
that's
Thank
right.
you.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Well done. Guys, we've just hit the 30 minutes mark. Thank you for keeping your answers succinct, and I think it's been quite informative for students. Yeah, I hope it was really helpful. Thanks for all your time and jumping in, and it's been great having a bunch of grads on the job, but also Isabel as well, you know, from the recruitment angle. So it feels like a fairly good mix. If you can, the way you came into this event, there's now the actual main event for the Super Fair itself. You would have got a bunch of spam from us in your email. There's ways in which you can go into the general event via the Engineering Careers Super Fair homepage. If you can go back to that, and then you can go speak to, I think there's 80 plus employers ready to speak with you and ask a whole bunch. You can answer a whole bunch, ask a whole bunch of questions and figure out what it is that you're looking for with more specific questions for specific employers. Yeah, I strongly recommend jumping back to how you came into this site or into your inbox. There will be an email there to access the main event, and you will be able to get in there and get stuck into asking questions to employers. But yeah, that wraps up the event now, guys. Thanks again for joining us, and hope you have a great session, students, in talking to multiple employers over the next hour and a half. But yeah, on behalf of all of us and Engineers Australia as well, thanks to Isabel, James, Bridget, and Stuart. I really enjoyed it. It was great to get chatting to you guys, and yeah, I think hopefully it gets students some really good insight. So thanks again.
Thanks heaps, Jeff. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thanks everyone for your time.
Thanks, guys.
And if anyone wants to reach out to ask more questions or connect or whatever, please do. That's what's going to help this whole career process. So start now.
That's right. And I'm going to work. I'll invite you guys to do what we call a day in the life article on like your day-to-day work at your respective employer. If you haven't already got one with us on Grad Australia or any of the sites we run, or make sure that happens for your respective employer profile on our site, so students can see day-to-day what it is you do. I'll send you a note afterwards, and if you're interested, we'd love to have that content. So any students watching the recording, they can check it out and be like, oh, cool, that's what James does day-to-day, or that's what Bridge does day-to-day, or that's what Stuart does day-to-day. It'd be good stuff, good content to help students. Anyway, guys, I think we're wrapping up.